Mesdames et messieurs, bienvenue sur le plateau de AC55 Network. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler éducation. Et pour faire cela, nous avons ici autour de moi deux professeurs. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to AC55 Network. Today, we're going to talk education. And to do that, we have two professors seated by my side, one to the left and one to the right. I'll let them introduce themselves to you, and we should kick off. But today, just so you know, today we're going to talk about education from the point of view of Africans here in Scandinavia and in Europe in general. Monsieur le professeur, bienvenue.
Merci. Bonjour.
We're going to start with an introduction. So please introduce yourself to our viewers so they know who you are. And to do this introduction, you're going to say your name, you're going to say your origin, and your education and work. Please, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rachidi Kochoni. I'm from Benin, which is a French-speaking country in West Africa. So you might have seen that there is not much people from Benin in Sweden.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you said before, I'm an assistant professor in France, maître de conférence.
Maître de conférence.
And so I teach economics.
You teach economics. And before teaching this economics, you've had a PhD, and you've been doing this for quite a while now.
I moved from Africa in 2004 to go to Canada, and yeah, I did a master and a PhD in economics.
In Canada?
Yeah, in Canada. And then, I mean, for my first job, I worked in a few places in Canada, and then this year I decided to move to Europe, and it happened that I chose to go to France.
So precisely right now you're a lecturer in France?
Yeah, I'm a lecturer at the Université de Cergy-Pontoise.
Maître de conférence.
Maître de conférence, yeah, which is...
Mr. Professor, welcome.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Romeo Tedongap. I'm an associate professor of finance at the Stockholm School of Economics, which in Swedish would be Handelshögskolan in Stockholm. I pretty much have the same curriculum as my friend and colleague Rashidi, who is here. I studied statistics and economics at the NCEA of Abidjan, which is the National School of Statistics and Applied Economics. And
but you come from Cameroon?
Yes, I'm from Cameroon. I'm originally from Cameroon.
Okay.
So then I studied there. I did my bachelor in Cameroon in computer science and mathematics. Then I moved to Ivory Coast, where I studied statistics and
at the master's level.
At the master's level. Actually, it is an engineer degree.
Okay.
And after that, I went to Canada, to Montreal, the University of Montreal. I did a PhD in economics. Specialized in financial economics and financial econometrics. And so I moved to Sweden in 2007. So I started my position here in July 2007 as an assistant professor of finance. And I recently became associate professor of finance.
Of finance at the Stockholm School of Economics.
At the Stockholm School of Economics. Yeah.
Quite an interesting background we have here. And our viewers must be wondering why this rich background. It's because today the topic on the table is education and work life of Africans. We want to have our guest impression on education and work life in the diaspora. So we go straight to the first question, and you can talk interactively. So whoever wants to decide to talk first, please feel free to do that. So I want to ask, first of all, what has been your experience as a student and some of the challenges that you faced as a student, both back in Africa and over here in the diaspora?
Maybe I'll let Rashidi start this.
My pleasure, thank you. I would say the first problem, first go back in Africa, because that's where we start.
As a student?
As a student, if you're an African student and start thinking of moving abroad, I mean, the first problem you face is the one on how to pay, you know, your study, and you need to find a scholarship, and also you need to have good information, because I mean usually sometimes you don't know very well what you want to do. You need someone to tell you
Some good orientation.
some good orientations, and we don't have that. Actually, most of us, once we're abroad, we don't think that much of putting things in place to help, you know, other people know where to go abroad.
Good direction.
And then, so that's the first difficulty. And finally, I mean, if you have a friend who left before, or a parent or someone, you glean information here and there. And finally, when you succeed, you arrive abroad, and you, for at least a few, I mean, in Montreal, we've been lucky because I met several people who I know before, or even I didn't know Romeo before going in Canada.
Yeah.
But given that we've done the same type of study, you feel close. You know, we have similar experiences, even though it's in a different country. So naturally, we've been lucky to be, you know, friends, to meet. So, but there are many people who basically they feel alone because they don't know who to talk to, because the system is not the same. You know, our education system in Africa is different from every country in the world. And then when you arrive, you want to know what are the how to, you know, take advantage of where the system, and it takes someone to, you know, to guide you. And most of the time we don't have that. You have to, and now today, I mean, I'm a professor, and sometimes I feel like I've been fighting by myself, like, but it's not exactly true. It's not exactly true. But sometimes you feel like that, but it's not good to feel like that, because we really need to go back and help our younger.
Professor Tedonga?
Yeah, I would say that I mean, our countries back to Africa, they gave us what they could give us. And of course, you know, given our economic situation and many other things, you know, we understand that, you know, we have to fight. Okay?
Yeah.
And but coming back to the orientation is very important, because why did we go to Canada, and especially Montreal, right? Because we had a French-speaking education, and, you know, naturally for us, you know, the best place to be was to go to France or to go to Montreal, okay, or Quebec, because they are French-speaking. So, and the information that Rashidi just talked about is very important. We don't have information. Because we don't have information, then we just do what is natural and generally more easier.
Whatever comes to you.
So it could be possible for us, even though we had a French-speaking education, to have other opportunities. But we felt, we had the feeling that they were narrowed simply because we didn't have the information.
Yeah.
But today it's good, because I mean, now we were lucky, because again, even though we chose the natural path, or what was natural for us, still we got a lot of guidances from people who were already there, and they could guide us. But today it's important for us to, you know, to let the others know that, you know, things are not that narrowed. Okay, so there are many opportunities, and we didn't know, for example, that even though we went to French, we had this French education, we could have a TOEFL, and then with that TOEFL we could go to, you know, an English-speaking country and have a completely different educational system, only because we had the TOEFL with a good score, right? And things could have been totally different than what we have today, okay? And well, but now I think that information is being shared, and people they've started to understand, and they are using that. So probably, yeah.
Yeah, and with your French background, and coming from French-speaking African countries, here you're seated and speaking, having this interview in English.
Yeah.
How did you manage to to get this kind of language proficiency?
Well, I never did a TOEFL in my life. I can assure you. I've never had an English-speaking education, but you know, I went to a bilingual university in Cameroon, which is the University of China. But I have only a couple of courses taught in English. But if you want, I built my English proficiency inside my own subject, which was economics. Okay. And we know that English is really the language of science, you know, and then, you know, you cannot avoid English in whatever you do. So I built my English proficiency on that. I'm sure Rashidi also did. But of course, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of time. It's a lot of, it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you can see now, it was worth doing.
It was worth doing it.
Yeah.
And Professor Kochoni, for you, it must have been even kind of tougher coming from Benin, which is only French-speaking.
Yeah, but I mean, we had the same difficulties in English, and actually, in my case, I actually like English. I mean, I used to be good in English, but when I say I'm good, you know what I mean. It's English taught at the, you know, elementary school, and so I wanted to learn more English, but I wasn't that good when I, you know, finished the high school. And so after, when I moved to Quebec, Quebec is a French-speaking province, but we're surrounded by, you know, English-speaking countries, and even within Montreal, you have a sizable, you know, amount of bilingual people, or even people who don't speak French at all. You have
Who speak English?
Yeah, you have a large area, and at the university, of your books are in English. Probably there's no course in English, but all your books are in English, and you know you have to write your thesis in English.
Yeah.
So basically, you learn faster how to write than how to speak.
That's true.
No, so basically, I finished my thesis, and I wasn't this fluent when I finished my thesis
So
3 years ago.
your thesis in English?
In French.
I mean, the thesis is written in English.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Education is in French.
It's in French.
Yeah, it's a kind of this is a Quebec style.
It's quite challenging.
So in my case, I did an immersion after my thesis.
Yeah.
So I went to Edmonton for a year. Edmonton is a city in Alberta, in Canada.
In Canada.
And I had to teach in English for the first time. And it was really tough during the first semester. But after teaching 5 classes, I think I improved. So
That's good.
So
basically learning by doing.
Yeah, it's learning by doing, as you said. I used to joke with my friends saying, actually we had to, because in general what people do, they learn English, like, you know, how to say hi, okay, and then, you know, how to ask for directions, and then, you know, they can study in English. So actually we did the other way around. So we first learn how to express ourselves in our subject before we learn how to ask directions in English. Okay.
That's true.
Okay, professors, I would like to know, with your level of education, being professors and being Africans in particular, how do you feel in the presence of other Africans? I mean, do you feel encouraged to get to this level of education and even beyond, or do you feel discouraged in the presence of other Africans?
Actually, depend on, you know, Africa is very diverse also. Yeah, you have different type of people, different cultures, different countries, and different backgrounds. So if I'm in presence of Romeo or people like, I mean, people who has similar background as me, who have same kind of history, I mean, they struggle to travel, to ask a visa, live in the cold. You know, it's a tough experience. Moving from when I left, because I moved from Benin and I spent 4 years in Senegal in that school. I mean, he did a school in Abidjan. I was in Senegal. And when I left Dakar, it was plus 30 degrees. And I took a plane, come to France. in France, I spent 10
Hours.
hours. And so within less than 24 hours, I moved from plus 30 to minus 22 was in January.
What a change.
And so it's a big challenge, and I even wanted to go back. I thought of it seriously. I say, oh, I don't think I'm going to spend a month in this
So
country,
there are
but so it's
many
tough.
questions. Yeah.
But then you start meeting people, those who look like you, those who share your point of view, and blah, blah. And that's how you select your your network actually. But then there are some people I'm very comfortable with because they know that they don't have to wait for Africa to do something for them.
Yeah.
They rather know that they have to do something back home. But there's some other people who are very negative about Africa. They're not those you think. They're not people who are uneducated. They're well-educated people.
Well-educated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have PhDs,
Yeah.
but they are very negative about
About-
their country of origin.
Yeah.
And for some of them, I understand because they left in the context of war.
Mhm.
But even though I think people need to question more events and really read our history and know what's happening in Africa. You know, I don't think there are some people who are good and some other who are bad because God created them as bad people. So you need to look at your own history. Why has there been war in Congo? You know, who profit from the war and so forth. So I don't want to talk politics here today. But I've met a journalist who is very brilliant, but he was a journalist, you know, who is a journalist? He has a micro like yours, and he can do very good thing,
Yeah.
and he can also do very bad thing just in 5 minutes. Just
Yeah. That's the power of the media.
just by so, and I heard him speaking in some Canadian TVs, and he didn't have anything good to say about us, even though he's from Africa. And so those kind of people, I'm not really comfortable talking to them. And I don't think we should fear each other. We should not be, we should develop some mechanisms to trust each other more. And that's a big problem, though. That's a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I think Romeo have something to say on this topic as well.
I think education, it's very important what you just say about our diversity. We have diversity, not just a cultural diversity, but African abroad, in the diaspora, we are also diverse
Yeah.
about the way we think about our countries and our continent. And being negative is really what we don't need now.
Mhm.
So I totally understand this negative point of view that people could have, but still, I always believe that our continent and our countries, they've done for us what they could do. How many people do not have what we had? But there are also Africans. There are, countrymates. And but the education that we're talking about today, and we've been abroad, we got a good education. We should be proud of it, and we should now try to see how we can use that to make things more easier for those who are now back home and are trying
Who haven't had the
to follow the
opportunity
same
then.
path.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and being an example is not being negative. That's what I could say. Yeah.
The main reason I asked this question is because I think over here in the diaspora, there has been some, on the street you would find some kind of comparison between those who haven't been excelling or those who haven't been going to school to a certain level, to a certain high level, would try to compare with those who have. And there is that impression, a general impression, unproven though, that whether you excel in education or not, there is no difference between you who is highly educated, you are highly educated, and he on the street who is not highly educated. Do you think there is a difference?
Well, there is a difference, of course, but it's good that people are different.
Of course, difference is good.
Yeah, difference is good. diversity is good. And but I do not feel, I mean, as an educated person, I do not feel superior or but no, I accept the others. Everybody is important, especially for us African. You cannot have only a country of educated people, okay, right? And even though you're educated, you have a subject in your education, okay?
Yeah.
I cannot do what a mathematician is doing, or what a biologist is doing, or a doctor is doing, okay? Uh, but having the community, having all these associations in the diaspora is really, to put together all these differences, okay, and then to exploit them for our best, okay, and so in my personal opinion, yes, there are differences, but nobody can claim that what he's doing is better than what the other are doing. I simply believe that all these components have to, I mean, they all work together. Okay. Yeah.
But all
Okay,
this negative view that others might have, hasn't it had an impact on you as a student? I mean, when you're going through education, didn't it have a negative impact on you, like pulling you back, thinking, should I continue in this manner, or should I step back and do some menial job around? I mean,
I think so. The negative things you mentioned might have something to do. Maybe it have to do with how some educated people behave, and also how some other non-educated people behave. And there are some, especially in Africa, we have a problem, which is that especially when you go abroad like us to study, when you come back and think you have good ideas, you have difficulties communicating with people. People feel like you feel superior.
Yeah, they feel challenged.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that's why. So there is some. The people don't trust each other actually. Yeah. Maybe you. I mean, so the same thing on the other side. You will have some other non-educated people who, at the first place, they feel already like challenged. They feel like they will be excluded from the deal, if they start listening to you. And so maybe we just need, as he said, to find a way to communicate. I mean, it's not because I have a PhD that I don't go. If there an association of Benin in France, when they doing social event, I go there. But
Socialize with everyone.
I don't have to say I'm a PhD. I go there. They don't even know who I am, and maybe one day someone will say, "Oh, this guy is my friend from this place. He's a teacher here." Then, and again, in my case, I didn't thought of stopping my studies earlier because I'm really passionate. I like what I'm doing, and I wanted to do a PhD in a way. And I didn't really think of. I worried more about if I would find a job or not, and so forth. So I didn't even think I'm doing it for Africa or something like that. It's something personal.
You do it for. And maybe I could jump in and say something that's also now that I've been in Canada and that now I'm in Europe. Okay, being in Sweden, I call it being in Europe because basically you can go everywhere in 2 hours. Okay? Yeah. And there is a critical difference is that when I was in Canada, I had the impression that most African immigrants that are there are very good entrepreneurs or very well educated people. Mostly, there are our countrymates and other Africans in general, when they immigrate to Canada, they go for studies. More than Europe, where most of the people, it's not really, how immigration in Europe from Africa is. I mean, there've been a lot of news, like recent news, which some were very bad, unfortunately. But so this is So this is the main difference. So now, being in a society where most of the other Africans are already educated people, you tend to understand each other, right? But when you move to Sweden, of course there are many educated, well-educated Africans in Europe and in Sweden, maybe even more, but also there are more who are not educated, and maybe you can start to have this kind of conflict. But again, the question is, do we really need to do that? When we're socializing inside associations, we're not there to talk about necessarily about what we're doing. It's basically, we're not talking about what each of us is doing, but basically what we can do all together, right? So that's the thing.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you that, somehow, it's I'll be lying to say that I didn't face this kind of, situation, okay? But again, it is not important, and in general,
And you try to overcome these challenges.
yeah, you too, of course you have to, otherwise you will live your own life.
Secluded life.
Right, yeah.
And could you expand a little on what you do as a professor in economics? What is it exactly that you do?
Well, actually, the professor of economics is...
He teaches finance.
Oh, finance,
There's a
okay.
little difference.
Yeah.
Actually, when you start a PhD in econ, you can choose to specialize in labor economics, industrial organization, natural resource. And I chose economics, econometrics, and financial. So, and Romeo is specialized in finance. So what I do as a researcher is basically work on what we call mathematical models, but for economics. So all kind of, so you know in economics you have the theory, which is usually beautiful theory, but at some point we need to take that theory and bring it to the data and test if your theory match the reality. And then you need formulas and math. So, and there are several specialties in economy that deals with those testing. And one of them is econometrics, and that's what I do as a researcher. So, and you can use those techniques for forecasting, for decision making. Basically, you want to know if the government asks you, should we increase spending in education? You can say yes, because it looks like, it sounds like it's good sense, yeah, saying yes. But if they ask you, what can we expect from it concretely in 5 years? Should we expect people to find easily more jobs, or can we expect to reduce unemployment with that, or can we reduce inequalities? Do you think it will work? Because I want to campaign in that region, and I want the inequality to be reduced there. So it becomes really precise as a question. And then you need to create measures to answer those type of questions. So now, as a teacher, you need to be versatile. You know, if you're doing research in a very narrow field, you need to be teaching. You need to be able to teach much more courses, and basically, apart from doing econometric, what I like to teach is macroeconomics, and of course financial economics. So, and I think I will let Romeo talk more about finance.
So, just before you get to that, Professor, so your research, I mean, it's like an input back into science and into policy making at the same time.
Basically, yeah. I will classify myself as, so part of what I do goes into what is called decision science, you know, how to make decisions, especially because, I mean, future outcomes are uncertain. Future is random. That's why we want to do predictions. And how do you reduce? How do you tell who will win the next election? By simply looking at what's happening now, you know. So this type of thing needs a few formulas, not necessarily complicated formula, because every day if you look, if you watch TV or read newspaper, you see polls. And those polls are usually you go meet people, ask them for you, you're going to vote, what do you think about this and that? And then from that, you have to infer the popularity of the candidate.
yeah.
But you also need to tell the number you're giving, how reliable they are. So that's the,
Yeah.
that's
From
the,
the polls.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the difficult
So
part.
it's a forecast, right? And
Yeah.
then you forecast with errors.
Mhm.
So, it's like when you go to the airport and then, when you're waiting your luggage, okay? If it says 20 kilograms, okay, there is a precision error. So basically the true size with something, it's around 20,
Yeah.
maybe 18 or 22. So there is an error, okay?
Yeah.
In everything we forecast, there is an error. Yeah, but at least coming back to my own subject,
Yeah.
at least we actually, when Rashidi was talking, I just discovered that we have a lot in common actually, about decision science, for example. Yeah, so most of my research is related to behavioral finance, so how people they make their decisions. Okay, one of these decisions could be just to ask you, this is a financial asset, right?
Mhm.
You know that if you put your money, it is an investment. It is risky. You can lose all your money if you invest all your wealth in that asset. Huh?
Yeah.
And the question is, are you willing to do that? And on the other side, you have a safe investment, of course, which will give you only 1% return. Let's say you have 100 crowns in the safe investment, and at the end of the year, you will have 101 crown with certainty. You know that you will have 1 crown more.
Yeah.
In the other side, you can still put your 100 crowns, but you don't know what will happen. You can end up losing 10, or you can end up winning 25, right? So which one do you choose? Risky or
Or the safe one.
or the safe one. So, and basically sometimes you just face an asset. I just propose you, guy, this is a very good project, and you're like, yes, but what is the fair price for this project? Okay, so this is what we call asset pricing. So you give,
Asset pricing.
yes, asset pricing means there is a financial asset, and what is the price, this fair price that people should trade, at which people should trade that financial asset. How much are you willing to pay for that financial asset? So, and that fair price depends on your risk aversion, okay, your attitude toward risk. Are you a very conservative guy? You don't want to take risk. You only go for safe things. Are you a very aggressive guy? So, you like risk because you know that the return is also high.
Can be high.
Or are you a moderate investor, or somebody who's in between the conservative and the aggressive? So, more generally, I am what we call in my profession an empirical asset pricer. So, I'm trying to understand the prices of financial product. Okay, what are the determinant? How come this product is $2, or how come this product is more expensive than the other? The price difference is due to what? It's probably due to the characteristics of the two products, but which characteristic in particular? So, and then I see how people attitude toward risk combined with all these exogenous characteristics, okay, market factors, how they all interplay to determine the fair price at which people are willing to pay financial products. So this is basically what I do. And again, when you look at people's attitude toward risk, it comes straight into the decision theory. Okay, so how do you make decisions?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay, professors, with this, with your education, your research, how do you think you could, today or in the near or far future, how do you think you can contribute to professional or educational development back in Africa? In what ways do you think you can contribute?
That's a good question, and it's a question I tend to discuss with many of my friends, different people. And I actually realized that at least people from my generation who hold PhDs and who are teaching in North America, they all they are successful, no doubt. They have good salaries, good house, and they travel a lot. They feel they have a good life, and then they want to do something for the country. And the difficulty usually is that, again, we have a problem of information. That's the first thing. And I told you before, when you want to go study, you have a problem of information.
Yeah.
Now, when you want to come back again to do something in your country, you have the same problem. You have a problem because you've been away for 20 years. And then you want to, you have first to decide, should I go to the public university or go to a private university, or do they even need someone at this time, or if you want to collaborate with them, what kind of arrangement can you make? So it's and also on top of that you add the mistrust, because most people in, at least I don't know how is it in Cameroon, but in Benin, our feeling is that those who are already in the academic system, they feel threatened when young people that are more competent come home, because they don't do any research usually. I mean, to their defense, they don't have research funds. But I think the intellectual life could be far higher than what we see today in Africa.
If they have the means
yeah,
to do more research.
actually, most of them took, they do PhD in Europe with, and after the thesis, they don't write papers anymore. They don't do research. They don't study the society in which they live, and advice. You know, they wait. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. Seriously, I think what makes the strength of Western countries that every day you have people thinking of problems and finding solutions. Some of them are well paid, others are not paid. They live in, you know, you have a Russian mathematician living in, some of them live with their mothers, I've heard. There have been one recently who got a prize, a prestigious prize. He derived very difficult formulas, and he was the first to find that solution. And when they asked him to come take the prize, he said no, he don't want the prize. I mean, so I think we could do better for our countries. Some of them just want to go home, say, okay, buy me the ticket, I will come teach, I don't want a salary. And you don't know who to talk to.
This is really,
You don't know who to talk to.
this is,
Okay, so you would like to
Sure.
to help educational
Of
professionals
course,
back
of
home.
course. We
Wow.
talked about that before coming to this
yeah.
interview.
So what Rashid just said is would be a very good start. I believe that African professors who are now full of international experience and are in the diaspora, they are willing to do something they want to give back to our countries. And yes, it could, no, and then you, so one way of doing it is really to teach for free, to give some education for free when, you know, they travel back home.
Back home, yeah.
They could arrange, if they have if they're staying for a couple of weeks, they could arrange 2 or 3 days of teaching, guest lecturing. They can do that for free. If I go on vacations in Cameroon, you know, I know I have my vacations already planned, right? So I will not ask for university to pay the ticket for me because, you know, it's a planned vacation. But I could secure 3 days to teach, okay, or give a seminar, okay.
That's something you're willing to
Talked
do.
about international experience because, again, there are many people who just want to follow the same curriculum, the
track,
same
yeah.
path, okay, the same track. So, but the question is, are universities back home, do they want that? Again, nobody is paying for my ticket here. But the normal thing is really what Rashidi said, is that they could pay you a ticket. Actually, they could contact us. There must be somebody in each African countries whose the role may be at the Ministry of Higher Education to identify all these professors that are abroad and send them emails and tell them and ask them if they are willing to come and contribute. I'm sure
to the
many
development
people,
of Africa.
yes, many people will be willing to do that if they are given the opportunity to. So this is the first thing we can do.
So the ball is on the camp
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
those universities, those
Yeah.
institutions.
This is the
As
first
well,
thing we
as
can
well.
do. Yeah. And it costs nothing for us because securing 3 days in Cameroon during your own vacations and doing something for, let's say, the university where you started, it's no, I don't I don't see why somebody would not do that. Okay, most educated people, most professors, I'm sure will be happy. At least the majority will be happy to.
And it's in the interest of
It
those
is in the
institutions.
interest of those institutions and also in our interest. Okay, giving back. We all learning. If the professors, they are students all their life. Okay, so and it's a different experience than the one we are having here, and even for us, we can compare to what we do here, and then we could even borrow from that. Okay,
Some knowledge
so
from that.
it's always it's always giving back and also taking back.
And
It's sharing.
yeah, it's been said, and it's still being said that today Africa suffers from one major problem. I mean, when we're talking about education, and it is being claimed by several persons that the African continent is suffering from what has been termed brain drain. Do you think this is a trend that is happening? I mean, brain drain in the sense that several Africans would leave the continent, come over here to the diaspora, and study a lot, and then not return back, rather stay here and work for European countries or other Western countries without giving back their knowledge to Africa to help in one way or the other. Do you think this is a major problem?
Certainly, brain drain is a major problem for our African countries, and but I don't think it's a problem without a solution. Okay,
Okay.
and there are many. Just take the example that we gave, that we just discussed about, contributing to educational development in the, over the continent. So I will not call it brain drain, at least for professors, okay, if they can have this opportunity to, to teach or give a seminar
Back
1
in
week,
Africa.
only 1 week every year will be a lot for our countries, right? And this, I will not call it brain drain because our countries, they need international experience. People, they have to live. Even here in Sweden, where we are, Swedish students, they go abroad. Well, they come back. Sometimes they don't. But you can still be happy to see that there is a Cameroonian or a Beninois in one country who is a professor there. The country should be proud that the youth is having international experience. The question is giving back. And again, there are solutions to give back, like giving seminars and things like this. So yes, there is a brain drain, absolutely, no doubt. But again, there are ways, we should not try to stop it because again, international experience is good. We should simply make sure that, people, when they go, they are willing to come back.
You're willing to come back.
For me, I think most Africans are just standing by, hoping that there will be good conditions for them to return, hopefully soon. And many educational fields in Africa, they're inexistent, right?
They need to be created.
Yeah, they need to be created. And by creating that, you have more people interested in, okay? You're also developing, okay, other types of jobs, which we have in Europe and everywhere, but which we do not have in Africa, okay? And maybe we also need to specialize in, subjects that are the most important for us, like development or, building small companies, corporate finance, I would say, things like that, okay? Yeah.
And do you
But,
think?
but sorry, I'm sure that I mean this is what I think, but I'm sure that Rashidi maybe has a completely different view or something to add.
No,
Because
I
You
agree
agree?
of almost everything you said. I mean, it's the brain drain had been a problem for a while, but today also the world has changed in a way. There is globalization. Uh, the world had become like a
Small village.
small village in some sense, and if you if you look at the because of the community of the academic community is not that big. If you take all people teaching in all universities in the world, it's not a very, very big community, and you tend to know someone at least within your field who is in Australia, and I think we need to be represented there. African needs to be on the stage also.
Everywhere
And
in the world.
Chinese
Everywhere.
understood it, and now they plenty of very brilliant Chinese economists in the U.S. working at all levels of, uh, of the system. They work at the Federal Reserve. They work as professors who hold the research chairs, etc. And so it's like a world where we need to have people talking for us. If you go in Australia and you see Cameroonian professor, you proud because you say, oh, here's a Cameroonian. They're not all in the street, or they're not doing small jobs. Not to say that small jobs are humiliating or not. They're very useful. But also we need to be represented at some places, having people doing finance, having people investing in the city or Wall Street. So all those things are very important for us. But also what we want is being able to go back and forth,
That's very
come back,
important.
contribute.
Yeah.
And he talked about, going back and give seminars. What will be more important for students is the interaction with them. They will ask you questions.
Yeah.
How
mean
to
back in Africa?
yeah,
Yeah.
how if I want to do a master, how to
Yeah.
go in Sweden,
Exactly.
where to apply, Those are questions that will be even more helpful than maybe the
Yes,
lecture
I've
itself.
done this.
Oh.
What would you suggest to
Exactly.
do further?
Yeah.
Okay, orientation,
Orientation.
is extremely important.
So I think the interaction, we don't go home and interact with our, our people, and I think it will be critical to in the near future. I start doing it with my country, talking to people and asking them how we could create maybe a virtual research center. We all live outside Benin, but we will have a research center located at least virtually in Benin, and we will go back home regularly to share what we're doing.
So otherwise, it's important, very vital to leave your African country. I mean, for some, it's important to leave these
Absolutely.
African countries, come over here and do some education, and why not stay and work here? Very important. But then once in a while, it's important that situations back home do encourage that if you want to help back with whatever you've gathered, you can do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what you're
Go back and share your experience.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, especially because we need it, right? I don't think that Europe, developed countries, they absolutely want their people to come back. Okay, I mean because in the country they already have what
Yeah.
is needed. Okay,
Yeah.
they could like track some people, but no, it is not a big need that all Swedes, for example, who are abroad, they have to come back home. Okay, but for us in Africa, it is very important, not that people they just back home, okay, but that they come back sometimes,
Yeah.
invest, contribute. For us, no, we are not investors, but, but I mean, entrepreneurs who are abroad, they have to, or people from the diaspora, they've been doing that already, right? Coming back home, building companies, investing. But for us who are in the education, of course, yeah, would be no. the same thing, so something similar would be to at least, share our experience in our teaching, our research. 1 week again, per year, it's already enough.
It's quite
enough.
useful. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've just been informed of the arrival of Dr. Nji from Stockholm University, who has just joined us on the studio. So we're going to take a short break to get the doctor installed. So we take 2 or 3 minutes break. Thanks. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear viewers, welcome back to AC55 Network Studio. We've just been joined by another doctor, Dr. Nji Emmanuel from Stockholm University. He had been delayed by some traffic problems, but now he's here with us. So, Dr. Nji, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Could you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Okay, I'm Dr. Emmanuel Donji, a postdoctoral researcher in Stockholm University. So, maybe I should tell you about myself, what I've been doing all this while.
But
before I got to
you're
this.
from Cameroon?
Yeah, I'm from Cameroon. So I had a bachelor's degree in Cameroon in biochemistry. So I moved to Finland and did a master's in protein science and biotechnology. In that master's, I went to London Imperial College and did a 1-year research project. And after that, I got a scholarship funded by Science Foundation Ireland and National Institute of Health USA to do a PhD in membrane protein crystallography in Trinity College, Dublin. So after that, I moved to Stockholm, and I'm here with you today.
Okay. Today you are joining Professor Kochoni and Professor Te Nungam. He's from Stockholm University of Economics, School of Economics. He too is from Paris. Sorry, in France. He's been doing some teaching there too. Both are doing some teaching. So, could you tell us particularly what is it that you're doing now?
Yes, simply I'll say diabetes. Actually, my research focused on membrane protein crystallography. So, in order to retrieve sugars from blood, the body cells have specific receivers on their surface to transport glucose into the cell. So my role is to understand how this process occurs at a very detailed level. And for this, we need high-resolution atomic structures of this protein. So that's what I'm doing.
And how do you go about doing this? I mean, what are the processes you go through to get this?
Firstly, we have to clone this protein. We express them, and we purify them. Then we set up crystallization in order to crystallize them. After that, we take these crystals to the synchrotron. These are X-ray sources all over the world. Particularly, we go to Diamond Light Source in England and the Advanced Photon Source, APS, in Chicago. We also go to the Swiss Light Source in Switzerland and also to ECRF in France. So we collect data for this protein to try to solve the structures. Yeah.
Quite interesting. What is the significance of this, both to science and to humans?
So solving this atomic structure will give an insight into how this protein transport their substrate, which is, this process is going to aid drug discovery and also to enhance existing medicine that are currently available.
Okay. And tell us, Dr. Nji, before you joined us, we had been talking about experiences as students or workers in the diaspora from an African background. What are the challenges that you've been facing during your educational and professional career as an African here in the diaspora? Have you faced some challenges or any opportunities?
Yeah, we normally have challenges all the time. Actually, if you come and study in Europe, the main thing is you would like to go back because there are certain things which might distract you here and you might feel it's not very necessary to go back, but it's very important. So it's like a challenge. I mean, I think you guys can also testify it's a challenge for everyone. So I'll probably like to go back to my home country and probably get my own funding and start a research group where I can conduct research and also train other students to get masters and PhD as well.
And within the African community here in the diaspora, do you feel encouraged in what you're doing, or do you feel discouraged within the African community?
Well, if you look at the African community, there are very like few people doing what I'm doing. Somehow it's discouraging, but on the other hand, it's encouraging as well. I think it's.
You don't feel looked upon as somebody apart, or do you feel like integrated within the African community, or do
Well,
you think they push you aside?
No, they don't push me aside. I really integrate with them. I have good friends, good company, and it's been awesome here in Stockholm.
Okay.
I like the city.
Okay, and that's nice. We had been talking about our contributions, and here I'm going to bring back these two professors into the discussion. We had been talking about your experiences when it comes to brain drain, if it's actually something you feel that it's happening, and how do you think you can help with the situation? Are you in the position of going back to Africa, Cameroon in particular, in your situation? Do you think you can go back to this country and do one or two things that could help? I mean, after you've gathered all the education, the opportunities in Cameroon and here, do you think in one way or the other you can go back someday, maybe for a short time, and help the country, kind of give back to the community? You think that's something you're willing to do?
Yeah, it's something I would be very happy to do, and it wouldn't be too long from now.
That's good.
Go back.
And professors, what do you think are the constraints to this kind of initiative? You all want to go back someday and give back to the community in Africa. What do you think are some of the constraints towards this gesture that you want to take?
Can I?
Of course.
There are a lot of constraints, and some of them are only distractions, actually. So he just mentioned that one has to focus enough in order to avoid being distracting by
circumstances.
That are not essential. Things that can be essential is if you have a wife, maybe she doesn't want to leave. So you have to discuss with her. And then third, you fear a loss in your standard of living. I mean, you have a salary here, and if you move
Back
definitely home, there will be a cut in your income. Sometimes maybe not in real term, because you have to spending now in Africa, not here. So
the standard of living also, the cost of living is
it's lower in Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are questions that become very important. But there are some other questions. If you get used too much to the way of living in Western countries, you start worrying about a lot of things: security, war for some people, for some other countries. I mean, in Benin, we're lucky because, and some other stuff. But again, I think the question should not be. I mean, the answer should not come from those small things. I think we have a society to build, and that's the most important thing. And there have to be a sacrifice somewhere, and we should be willing to, to go home. No one will build Africa for us, and if it's already good, maybe we don't have to go back anyway. So we should be aware that we precisely have to go back because there are difficulties. There are problems to solve, and you don't have to solve all problems either. You just want to contribute. For example, as he said, train master students and guide them through PhD programs, and that's already a very important contribution to society.
Yeah.
So I
Orientation
think,
is very important.
Orientation.
so I think there are difficulties and logistic difficulties, psychological.
There could be some institutional constraints as well, but again, we've lived into those constraints in the past, right? And but we can overcome them quite easily because we already know we are prepared for that, and I think the first thing to work on is to work all together to put good conditions for people to to go
Be
back
able
and
to go
forth,
back,
like
yeah.
contribute, like again, like a very short period every year would be would be fine. So we need to work on those conditions. I mean, people, they have different they have different constraints. They have different views about what will be necessary for them to contribute easily. Well, the willingness to contribute, I think, is quite general. So now we need to work on those conditions first. And again, I'm sure we cannot just do this by ourselves. People from the diaspora, we need to communicate with people in Cameroon or other countries in Africa in general, and see what we can do to to prepare the ground to to accept those contributions or to facilitate them. Yeah.
And what do you think, Dr. G and the professor, what do you think, what do you expect from the government, I mean the different governments back in Africa, what do you expect for them to do in order for you to be able to help Africa develop educationally, professionally, and otherwise? What do you think are those conditions that they need to do?
I hope we are not easily going to politics.
No,
No,
not politics.
I don't think so.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
talking-
I just
I'm
want to make
talking
sure
No,
that
not politics. I'm talking about the situation. What are the conditions or what are the opportunities that you would like for them to create so to
Exactly.
facilitate your
Exactly.
assisting Africa, the continent?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, that's a very good question, I think, and I really expect a lot from the government, especially in terms of research. If you look at back home, if you look at our facilities and infrastructures, they are very, very poor.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I first saw a PCR machine, a machine which they used to amplify DNA. I first saw that in Finland. And in my undergraduate degree, I learned about those things in theory.
That's in Cameroon.
Yeah, in Cameroon. So it will be very nice for the government to put money into these things to get students to get practical experience. The practical experience is very important, such that if at all they have to come abroad, they can easily compete. They have that standard, they can compete with students abroad and so on, in terms of job opportunities. Yeah, so.
So maybe there is something that actually we didn't really emphasize. We always talk about what the government can do, but actually, not. There are many institutions that actually can help. For example, apart from the government, there are firms, there are companies. Okay, the company contribution to what you just mentioned, infrastructures, research facilities, it's a big component in developed countries. I don't think of course the government invests in research and education in general, but social responsibility of the companies is also, okay, to put money into education, because we're training people they're going to hire tomorrow. Okay, it is also. And I think this is something that Africa has not been working on so far, like raising money from the private sector
The
to put it into the education. Yeah,
in
exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, the private sector is undeveloped. I mean, how many companies, for example, if I just take the example of Cameroon, how many companies that are in the countries are actually, giving money, donations to universities, for example.
That's a challenge.
Yes, it's a big challenge. So we need to be able, and the government can help very much on that, raising money from the from the private sector, not just the government, the universities themselves, right? They can contact banks, they can contact many big companies in the countries and say, oh, well, we have this line of research, we have these students they have this great idea, but we need fundings. Can you do something? Okay, money that is coming from the private sector is much more important than the one that the government, because we know that our governments already they have a lot to do, and not only they have a lot to do, but they are already extremely limited in their resources, right? Yeah.
So
But
I think
education, it's one important thing they need to really invest in.
if I may add something, it's we need to create that culture, because the culture is a culture actually. It's a culture, and
Totally
it's
agree.
something we need to bring. And right now, I think in Benin they have started doing it. If you go on the website of our biggest university, they're raising funds from the public. They announced publicly that they want to build a new amphitheater. It costs $1 billion of CFA, and you can also see how much they have raised so far, and so people are donating. So it's new, and we should really encourage our universities to go toward that. But also, most companies who invest in education, they expect something back.
Which is
Something
fair enough,
more,
right?
something more immediate, something
In the short
profit in short term, and sometimes what it means is that you need to do a kind of research that can be useful in the
those
near
companies.
future in some way. For example, if you develop a model for a better management system, or how to better allocate portfolios, etc. And if you go see, if you ask a bank to put money in a master program, and explain that those students will be really in 5 years they will be very ready to contribute. Maybe they will be willing to do it, and that would be a new thing, because so far I think in Benin at least there is not much interaction between
The private
academia
and
and
the
private
public, and
sector.
the academia and the private.
And at least we know today that communism has failed, and we don't want to go back to communism. So it means that we want private sector to be leading more and more in our economies.
Yeah.
And one implication of that is that private sector has to contribute more to education, but education also has to
give back to the
private sector. So we really need to
And
create.
this in terms of qualified plumbing. Yeah.
So in a sense, academia has to be sort of adapted to practical problems.
Yeah.
Only on part, because there are some problems that are fundamentally theoretical, with no implication. Maybe in the next 100 years we don't know what to do with that result, but at least we have the result. And so people need to work on both. Research that has policy implication or immediate policy implication, and also theoretical result, abstract result that are not necessarily usable right now, but which are useful, which will constitute the stock of knowledge for society. And when I mention stock of knowledge, maybe I will take that occasion to say also that in our country if you look at even in country where the government changed, you have the impression that we are repeating, we start over again every time we have a new government, or we have a new, not only government, if you the head of the university, when he changed, he lived with all his experience, the new one has to redo everything. So we don't have that cumulative And I think that should be solved also, so
Yeah.
that if we reach somewhere, we really reach there, society has reached that point, and the new guy who come already benefit from that, and add his
The transmission
yeah.
is not really, yeah.
So there are actually a lot of things to do, and we hope to contribute in one way or another to those challenges.
Okay, dear professors and Dr. G, we are running to the end of our discussion. So please, any final word to our viewers? Anything you could say about education, about profession, and any advice, word of advice to our viewers?
I've been talking too much, so I will
Well,
let Romeo start.
I no. First of all, again, I would like to thank you. This is the AC 55 network for organizing this. Guys, I think what you're doing is actually great because you're offering a platform to discuss this subject. I'm not saying that it hasn't been done, but one more is not, I mean, it's well taken. It's a plus, yeah. So what I can say about education more generally is that education in our continent, it's probably where we have to invest the most for the future. We also have other things, health and whatever. But education is probably the most important component of our society, in every society in general. Yeah. So, and I know that Africa has been struggling, has been trying hard to have a better education. And then I also know that it's increasingly becoming better, but I'm sure that we can do a lot more, and especially giving international experience to to our education in Africa. That international experience is very much needed. And there are many ways of doing it. We already have it because there are many Africans with that international experience, and it's only the way of how to bring this back, okay? And again, we need to work on that, and with this kind of discussion, of course, the next step will be to really sit down and see what are the ways, okay? What are what can be implemented, okay? And yeah, this is where I think we should move on.
Thanks. Professor, any word of advice?
Yeah, I think, as Romeo said, education is very crucial for development. If you look at the difference between the Asian emerging countries and Africa over the last 50 years, what you learn is that human capital made the difference. There are some countries, Ghana were richer than Korea 60 years ago. So the GDP of Ghana was superior to Korea. And today, I mean, you can compare yourself. If you take...
and Ghana is one of the countries who's doing very good.
And today, maybe the two biggest companies of Korea, Samsung and which one again? If you take those two companies, maybe they have the GDP of Ghana, maybe. I don't know, I haven't checked. But just to say that we need to invest in education, and education will bring changes in culture, in ways of thinking. People will become more rational, and less emotional, I think, because we tend to...
labor.
And we also need to work on our cultural differences and to become a more homogeneous community. I think one big problem we have in Africa is that we feel different from each other. When I look at you, I feel you're different. You're a Bamileke, I'm a Yoruba, and I don't feel like you're my brother, And that we need to restore that connection among Africans. They need to see, not love each other, but at least feel like this guy is a friend, And we don't feel it. That maybe that's one way to answer a question you asked before, but yes, we need to work on education, but also on changes at the cultural level. But I think education can play a big role.
yeah.
And I want maybe to say that good things are taking place right now in Africa. There's a new school called African School of Economics that's opening next year in Benin. And it's been created by a great professor at Princeton. He's from Benin, Wanchekon Leonard. You probably heard of him. So he's created that school. And it's probably going to work as a North American type institution, but the idea is to bring
This is international experience. This is really good.
and he's working hard to really create something serious. He's very serious about doing things right, and he also wrote a paper that's how he's publishing the #1 journal in the field in America. It's called the American Economic Review, and the title of the paper is "The Origin of Mistrust in Africa." So, the origin of mistrust in Africa,
Mistrust, yeah.
and I think it probably has to do with some of the subject we discussed today. And it's someone who really cares about the continent, and he's working hard, and we would like to see other people doing similar thing in the near future.
Right.
I mean, at this time we can't. We're still young and struggling to have good
And we don't
jobs
have
and
more.
and secure our jobs. But this is the type of thing
Yeah.
we would like to, be doing the next year. And I think he
Dr.
mentioned.
Nji, final contribution?
Well, you guys have probably said a lot about education, like the benefits, and so what I want to do now is just to encourage those who want to get up in terms of to educate themselves. They should just go for it. I mean, if you look at us sitting here, I mean, to get a PhD is not like rocket science.
Rocket science.
thing.
It's tough,
So-
though, but, but you managed
Yeah.
to go through.
Yeah, it's something if you believe in it
Yeah.
and you work hard, you're going to be there.
Yeah.
So I'm also encouraging like my African brothers to
Go for it.
go for it and not to be disturbed, not to be discouraged
Yeah.
by anything.
And aim high.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
high. Yeah, so that would be my.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our discussion today. You've heard it from the doctor and the two professors here. Our subject today had been education and professional work for Africans in the diaspora. You've heard it. Go out there, for those of you who are watching and who have the intention to go into education. Please feel free and have the courage. Go develop yourselves. Study as hard as you can. And there are going to be some setbacks, but try to go beyond those setbacks, and you will certainly make it. And at the same time, those who have been doing this, who have been studying, they have the intention to go back and develop Africa. And we're encouraging those of you out there who have gone far in education and work life, go back and develop Africa. Nobody's going to develop Africa for us. We have to do it by ourselves. And at the same time, we implore our governments back home to create the conditions, to create the opportunities for those who have achieved a lot to come back and in one way or the other help develop our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Mesdames et messieurs, merci d'avoir regardé cette émission. Nous vous prions de bien vouloir contacter le site pour une prochaine édition. Merci beaucoup. Goodbye.